Okay, here we are, still in Stockholm, for our second interview with somebody to speak about Academia Europea. Dan Brandstrom, who is in charge of the Riksbanken's Jubileum Fund, a generous donor of money to the Academia. Dan, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
So
thank
please tell me about yourself, where you come from, and how you became involved with Riksbanken to begin with, and your attitude toward Academia.
Yeah. Oh, I'm as Stig Strömholm. I'm also born in the northern part of Sweden. I'm born in the county of Västerbotten in a small village called Ekträsk, and I went to school in Vindeln, and I went to school in Umeå in my gymnasium, and then I went to Uppsala for my first academic degree in the beginning of the 60s, and I stayed in Uppsala for 3 years and finalized my studies there, and then was the fifth University of Sweden established, the University of Umeå in the north, which I was then offered a position as the assistant to the professor in political science in Umeå. So then I took on that duty to become the assistant to him. So I was the first person who was hired in that new department of political science in the University of Umeå.
You must have known Erik Bylund.
Absolutely, I know him very well. And he was appointed professor the same year. He was appointed, as a matter of fact, in June '65 when I also started in Umeå. So I know him very, very much. But I'm sorry to say that he passed away some years ago.
Yes, sorry. He was a very good friend, good geographer. Yes. So a norrlänning.
Yeah.
And how come you got interested in political science? Was it the regional origin?
Yeah, I have always been, I think, from my childhood. My father was involved in the labor movement, and my father was very deep involved in politics, in local politics, and I listened to all the politicians who came to my home village, and I became very, very early interested in politics. So that's why it was natural to me to study political science when I came to Uppsala, and I combined that with history and economics and other subjects, but so this was my national field, of course.
I see. I didn't associate Uppland particularly with radical.
No, but it was of course my parents' background who took them into the labor movement, and which they became their position and their interest. And so my father he had all the duties you could have in a village in a small place like my home place. So he took care of everything. He was the bank also. He was the one who, not sitting and waiting for the customers, he went to the customers and picked up the single crowns from every citizen in the village and delivered it to the saving bank. So he was honored for that later in life. But he was really nice person in that respect. And my mother was, from her I think I got the ability to go on with my studies, because she was very eager that I should go on. And I was the first one who, in my family, got to a student exam. So that was absolutely extraordinary in my family. And I was absolutely the first who then took on university studies.
How fortunate you were to have your father, who was an innovator, a real innovator in terms of local politics, and a mother who was interested in the intellectual world.
Absolutely.
You were fortunate.
That was a very, very good background.
Very, very good, And at college, at the Uppsala, were there particular teachers that you...
Yeah, I must say that in political science, my first semester I had, it was one of the first teachers was Stig Strömholm. He was then he had just come home from Munich in 1962, and he was my teacher in common law. So he gave some lectures. He was one of the first teachers I had in the academic world. So I was very fortunate to have him, and also to be able to work with him as in the end of his academic career as my chairman of the Riksbankens Jubileumsfond Foundation. Was absolutely fantastic.
Yes, so I think he must have been a very impressive speaker.
Absolutely,
yes,
he was.
And he again provided the link, the continuing link with Riksbanken and so on. Well, tell me about how you got involved with Riksbanken then.
Yeah, in '65 when I came to Umeå, the same year Riksbankens Jubileumsfond was established by a donation from the Bank of Sweden. And the donation was 250 million Swedish crowns in the beginning of the '60s, which was a very, very big donation at the time.
Yes.
And it was in order to celebrate the oldest national bank of the world.
It was 300 years or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was established in 1668.
Okay.
And it is 16 years older than Bank of England, you know.
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
so it's the Bank of Sweden has a very interesting story.
History, yes.
So this foundation was then established in '65, and was then granting research in the field of social sciences and humanities mainly, but also other fields of science and medicine and so on. So it was a very, very, very big donation, and you can say the first years they could deliver more money out of this foundation, and the state research councils could deliver at the time.
Wow, wow.
So it was a really big input into the research community at the time. And the professors in political science, all in Sweden, that at the time it was 5. It was 5 universities, 5 departments of political science. All these 5 professors united on a common program on the, you could say, the communal changes in Sweden and the
rationalization of the communes. Okay.
And I had started with my, you can say, my licentiate and with another topic, but I said to my professor in Umeå at the time, I think that even if we have started this autumn, we should join, even if we are small. We should take a chance to be also with the others, and because this is a chance to build up our department, so that we should join and be part of this. And this program was the first application to this Riksbankens Jubileumsfond.
Okay.
So my name was in the first application, and the first also application which got money from the Riksbankens Jubileumsfond. So I got my salary paid from the foundations from '65 to 2 years onwards to finalize my licentiate on the nominations of within the political parties on the communal level in Sweden at the time. So this was my connection with the Riksbankens Jubileumsfond, and then coming back and become later the director of that foundation was absolutely, for me, it was a fantastic thing.
That must have been. But can I stop you there for a minute? Because your father's work in keeping alive small communes, wasn't this Riksbanken project somewhat threatening to that idea?
In a way, because that was, of course, you're absolutely right in that respect, because a lot of small communes disappeared, and also the way of that the people within the communes took care of these narrow things was then, you could say, more in a way abolished, and a lot of hired people came into bigger entities, and anyway it became a distance between the electorate and the citizen and how they run the commune. So, in a way, you're absolutely right.
Well, my friend Torsten Hagestrand was very much involved with that project, so he in later years used to reflect on it. But anyway, we're talking about Academia Europea here and how Riksbanken continued to support it from the time you were, even before you joined it. Nils-Erik Svensson.
I knew Nils-Erik Svensson quite well, and I met him many, many times. I started to work with him when he worked in what they call the Chancellor's office in Sweden. Then he recruited me in the beginning of the 70s in his group of people in this research community in the Chancellor's office. So I knew him for a long time ago. Sweden is a small country, so I was then a person which came into his views very, very early in time. So when he then said in the late 80s, once upon a time when we met, he was such an enthusiastic person. And he came to me and all the time we met, he said, you know, I have the best job in the world.
Why was that?
And I said, and this was, I think it was in 88 or 89 or something like that, when we met at a party or something. And I just said back to him, okay, Nils-Erik, I would like to have that job after you.
Really?
Yeah, so I said. And of course it was more or less a joke. But and that he then, when he was about to leave, he sent me by letter that I'm going to leave now, and you have now a chance to apply, because it was advertised.
Okay, yeah.
I think it was more than 40 applicants for that interesting job.
Yeah.
So I applied, and I got the job.
Fantastic, yeah. Great.
And if he, I don't think he played a very important role in that process, because it was not so that the head, the existing person in charge, was involved in the recruitment of the successor. But I was very happy when he and his chair at the time is also Kjell Härnqvist, also a member, I think, of the Academia Europea, phoned me, and I know I still remember that it was the 12th of December in 1991.
I see.
They called me at 6 o'clock in the evening after the board meeting and said, "You have got the job."
That was a happy Christmas for you.
Absolutely.
A happy Christmas present, yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. And so you during your time of being head of Riksbanken, you contributed to...
and you know, Nils-Erik was a very, very enthusiastic person. He was also very interested in European affairs and European building up now also capacity in Eastern Europe. He came very early in the building up the Collegium Budapest, which I'm the chair of now, still involved in, and he was also a member, active member in the end of the 80s of the Hague Club. The Hague Club is a club of foundation directors, which was established by around 1970. It was, you can say, a period after the building up the post-Second World War research community in Europe. A lot of people came from United States to Europe in various conferences from the foundation world, and tried to give us lessons in Europe how to create the foundation world like the one in the US. But it was not so easy to establish a foundation environment in Europe as it is in the US, of course. But anyway, all these meetings in London, in Germany, and elsewhere in Europe, with all these American foundations, in the end of the day, made the European foundations to meet and establish a club of directors of the biggest foundations in Europe. And Nils-Erik was the person from Sweden. He was the first one. He was for many, many years the only person in Scandinavia belonging to that club.
Okay.
And so he was very much involved in everything in Europe from the foundation world during his period.
What was the name of that club?
Hague. It was established in the Hague of Netherlands.
Okay.
That's the name.
Yeah.
So they have as the symbol of the club is a stork.
Oh.
And it's the symbol of the Hague
Okay.
in the Netherlands.
Yes. Okay.
And it will be now a meeting very soon, this year, I think, or next year, for the establishment of this club, in memory of that. I have been the chair also of the club. But within the club, it was also a lot of discussion about European scientific issues, of course, and there were people from the Wellcome Trust there,
Yes.
and also people from the Volkswagen Foundation, Stiftung, and it was from Gulbenk and other big foundations in Europe. So Nils-Erik was also, of course, very intrigued by the happenings in Berlin when the Berlin Wall fell down.
Yes.
In the 9th of November '89, and which was in a way at the same time as Academia Europea was established.
Yes.
And I know that since David Magnusson has been a very prominent member of the board of the Riksbankens Jubileumsfond and worked with Nils-Erik Svensson for many years. He and Torsten Husseins and others, Hegerstrand and others, prominent scholars of the time, had a lot of conversation with him. And in a way, I was happy and felt very happy to take over this network of fantastic good scholars.
Yeah.
And so I know that he supported Academia from the beginning, and he was also very much European in his way of doing funding, and he was also trying to get a relationship with the Humboldt Stiftung and with this awards. So we still, the Riksbankens Jubileumsfond has this connection with Germany also.
Oh, good.
So in a way, I can say I took over his network, and I became, I think, even more pushed even more the foundation to go in that direction. You know, at the time, you can say all these foundations in various countries of Europe were very national.
Well, this is the thing. Yes.
They were very national because of the taxation rules and so on of each countries.
Yeah.
So it was in a way a fight every time to send foundation money to another country.
Yes.
So it was in a way it was a daring thing to do.
Yes,
because you
indeed.
could have the tax authorities behind you and say this you can't do.
Yeah.
But we did so, and we have had no problem with that, because it was, I always said, it is in favor of Swedish science that we are open-minded for collaboration with other scientists in Europe.
Yes.
So when I came into this position, I remember then David Magnusson came to me and asked also for money for the Uppsala meeting
93.
in '93, because then I was very new in my position. And since I had Nils-Erik Svensson's voice in my ears, that it was and I knew David Magnusson also, of course, and I trusted him, I trusted people on board of the Academia Europea, and I thought this is a great thing to be part of. So let us give money for that, of course.
Okay.
And I was invited to the meeting, and I met with Sir Anna Bergen at the time, and he was the president of the Academia Europea. And I remember that I found that meeting in Uppsala very interesting, and so from that day I must say that I always have followed what has happened within the Academia Europea, and I also had a very, very good collaboration with Professor Jürgen Mittelstraße during his period president. He came to me many, many times.
Okay.
And we met both in Sweden and in Germany and in various places. And we had a lot of conversations throughout the years.
Yes.
So,
have you the same relation with the Norwegian chap that has
he was now elected now in Liverpool when I was honored with my being a member of the.
Yes.
I was very proud of getting this honor, but I met him there, and no, he's a nice person, and I think it would be an excellent president, of course.
Yes, of course, yeah. But now you've had a lot of experience with these foundations, these private foundations, and then the national research councils. Some familiarity also with the European Science Foundation. Excuse me. What are the prospects for Academia Europea financially?
Yeah, I think that it is very important that we are building up a scientific community in Europe, and I think that it is also very important that it is a strong community for basic research in Europe, and I think that we must have. I've been now very much involved in the, the research policy issues on the European level. So I was the secretary of the group, the major group, who then put forward the suggestion of having a European Research Council.
Yes, I'd like you to speak a little of that as well.
And then I, because why I was so very much involved in getting a research council in Europe was that it was my firm conviction, and still is, that in the long run, if we will compete with other parts of Europe, we have to strengthen the support for basic research, and that must be done more and more on a European level.
Collaboratively.
Collaboratively. And I think if you can get a strong support for that on the European level, then we also must have on the European level a body, an academic body, which are independent from all the politically involved organisms. You must be have an independent academy for the science in Europe, which can be a strong in advocacy against the European Union, against the countries, the member countries of Europe, national arena, an independent voice of scholarly active people on the European level is, for me, very essential. And I think that this that's why I really have been for years trying to support the infrastructure of the Academia Europea, so that it can play that role. And I really hope that also some other independent foundations in Europe could have supported. And I know that it is easier to support projects going on.
Yes.
And I know that they have got some support also from other foundations.
Yes.
And it's easier to get project money, but it is always difficult to get these, you could say, long-term support, basic support, if you are not have a member contribution, which is not enough.
But the European Research Council, does it not play that role to some extent?
I had hoped so, because I had hoped that also members of the Scientific Council of the European Research Council, I had hoped that they should see the Academia Europea as a very important body,
Yes.
for also for the European Research Council. So if I have been a member of the European Research Council, Scientific Council, I should have been pleading for given an annual grant or a rather big grant for the academia so that it could fulfill its role on the European ground.
But the European Research Council it is multinational, right?
Yeah.
And multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
And it is pretty much an independent voice.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
maybe it considers academia irrelevant or unnecessary.
No, absolutely not.
No?
Because no, absolutely not. Because it is always very essential, I think, for a body like the European Research Council to have, you can say, a friendly, critical support somewhere.
Yes, yes. A counter voice.
A counter voice,
balances,
so to
yes,
say.
okay, yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned now a few times over lunch and now the attitude of the pure scientists toward EU and its framework programs.
Yeah, the reason why I concentrated my efforts on getting a research council in place was that I knew that all these framework programs were looked upon with a lot of skepticism by the researchers, and I fully understand that because the framework programs was very bureaucratic, and in a way they hadn't the focus which you must have if you are working with you could say with curious directed science scientific work, because they had other aims in a way. They were not excellence in research was not in focus. It was just to create a lot of side effects of things, and I don't think that it was enough focus for research and research excellence. So that's one of the things which I thought with the framework, and it was little too bureaucratic because you had to find people from other parts of Europe. If you should be successful in getting support for a framework program, you had to find a person in Portugal or if you're from Sweden, in Greece or in Italy or in a southern European country in order to get the research funded. But I think that you must have somewhere in Europe a place where you can. The only thing which should be supported when you look upon an application is excellence.
Excellence and European interest as well.
Of course.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but you could of course have a European interest is to have a very, very good scientific community, and this is the best way of compete with other parts of Europe also, but you could have also perhaps collaborate with having a person from other part of Europe. Instead, this could collaborate with an American scholar or an Asian or Chinese or Japanese. That doesn't bother me, but focus on excellence and of course with a European perspective in a way.
Yes. But I have the impression that what the framework programs try to do is to absorb as much of the techniques and previously rehearsed exercises of ESF and some other, like the establishment of networks. That wasn't an EU invention. It was an adoption by EU of a project idea that had worked previously. So maybe the Commission is trying to learn from the experiences of the scientists.
But I think in a way that they were on the wrong track in the European Union from the beginning, because I think then they thought that the way that Europe should play its role best way was just to open up the research councils in the various member states. And that's the way of collaboration in basic science. Because when we started the process of the European Research Council, in a way they thought that the idea was to give a little small sum of money to the European Science Foundation in order to create 20 million euro or something like that, in order to create some collaboration between some researchers in Europe. That's, of course, peanuts compared with the sum of money that they had the intention to give to framework programs.
Yes.
It's absolutely peanuts. So in a way, I thought it was a way of marginalizing the basic research.
I see.
And I said this is not the way to go. It must be within the own programs. So my feeling is that in a way, you must, in the long run, 50 years ahead, it must be much more money for basic research in the European Union, and the Research Council should be much bigger.
Yes.
And that you should decrease the money for framework programs. They could be phased out, more or less. And I think that there are some, of course, big things which you have to do on the European scale, which you can't do within a member state, like bigging research and CERN and some activities of that size, which you can't do within a member country. But otherwise, I think that when it comes to more things which are now being done within the framework programs, will be taken over by the member states in the future, because these essential programs, which are very narrow to the people and which are also close to what kind of industry various countries have, people are in these countries very interested to look for that these industries will have a good possibility to grow and to give. So all these type of research, which are very connected to the local society and the member states, should be, of course, in the various member states.
Yeah. Well, you've touched on a very touchy issue. Sorry for the pun, but you emphasize basic research. But basic research is done primarily within particular fields on an international scale. To get cross-disciplinary collaboration, which was one of the ideas of academia and one of the ideas of EU, it is societally oriented, problem orientation that works best. So what's your feeling about what academia should be about? Should it concentrate on the basics, or should it concentrate on the applied, or find some way of combining these two?
As it is now, I think it will be very much focused on. Then you have to change almost the composition of the Academia Europea, because today it is. If you look at the members of the Academia Europea, they are more or less coming from the basic science areas
and humanities.
Yes. And I think that's. I don't speak about science in that meaning of you can say
biophysical.
I mean the whole scale from humanities to medicine and to. But I think that, of course, you also it is very also important that you find an arena for discussion cross-border disciplines. Of course, that's very essential. But I think, and that's also, you can have projects within the in basic science and in what you call science areas which are supported by European Research Council, which could be cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary subjects. I am very much in favor of that, and that's also what the Bank of Sweden Tercettini Foundation is very much supporting. So I'm not against that. I'm very much in favor of that. But these are I think that the best type of collaboration should be given to those who are. They must also be very, very good in their fields.
Respective fields.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And you're coming from Sweden, a country that has invested so much, right down the centuries, in fact, in scholarship and training. speaking. Do you feel Sweden does have a special message for neighboring countries, not just the neighbors in Scandinavia, but to Europe as a whole?
Yeah, I think that Sweden is, by tradition, a strong scientific country, and we are at the top when it comes to statistics, also when it's supporting science, and we've had a rather good support on the political level for good academic research in Sweden. So I think that we have a rather proud history to tell also our neighboring countries, and I think that what we have been, and also in the way we are working together with science and society, I think we are rather we are rather front runners, I think, in that area too. That's why I think that we have something to contribute to the European arena, and so I say many times that we should not be so shy when we go to Brussels. We have something we can also be proud of, and we can perhaps also have something to sell to others.
Absolutely. And to go back to the origin of the Riksbanken, who was the founder in 1668? Was it Oxenstierna? He
was not alive at the time, because he in a way I think he passed away when the bank before the Bank of Sweden was established, the Palmstrukska Banken, which was established, I think it's the same year as Oxenstierna in 1654 or something there. And so, but it was of course in his spirit, because he was such a fantastic leader of the time, and had a view of how to organize a country, or a big power, as Sweden was at the time in Europe. And he was, of course, a person with a very special vision. And in that vision, also the Bank of Sweden was established.
Yes, I think so, Well, I think, Dan, you and the bank have given so much already to European collaboration in science, not only just in money terms, but also in conceptual terms, and drawing on the Swedish long experience of scientific orientation. You have contributed a great deal. So thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you very much. Thank you indeed. Thank you.